In the previous lesson, we looked at binary numbers and how we equate those to decimal and hexadecimal values and how those can represent both characters and how they're used in colors. We kind of dwelled a little more on the colors at the end of that lesson. Now I want to unpack how to use the ASCII values or Unicode values in our VB code. How can we bring up special characters? We saw that we have an ASCII chart where there's all these different characters that are available to us and then a decimal value for each of those. So a capital A is a decimal 65. Well, how would we display that, or how would we display, say, the copyright symbol or an inverted question mark in our output? So we have several methods that are built into Visual Basic. One of those is the CHR method. Remember that methods have parentheses. That's one way to tell it's a method. So CHR is a method, and inside the parentheses we put the decimal value of the character we want to display. So CHR 68 would display an uppercase D. CHR 65 would display an uppercase A. 36 would display the $sign. Now that CHR method is valid for ASCII numbers that are less than 128. So I want to display the inverted question mark. Then you might see the beginning of a Spanish question. How do we display that? That's an extended ASCII character and also a Unicode character. Extended ASCII characters go up to 255. That's what this ASCII chart here is showing. But Unicode characters are 65,000 in some, which gives us access to all kinds of special characters. Well, the inverted question mark actually is part of the extended ASCII, but we can't use CHR for that. We have to use CHRW. And its value is 191. Now you won't see that here on this ASCII chart because I'm not sure what font they used here, but it wasn't AscW UI that I'm using. So it's the inverted question mark is 191. I can also use the hexadecimal value, which would be a BF. I'm going to bring up the Windows char map. This is a utility built into Microsoft Windows, and we can see the various characters that are available to us, and we can do it by font. So you can choose which font you want to use because the characters displayed are font dependent. In other words, an uppercase A in a Wingdings font would not give us the letter A. It's going to give us a little icon. So I'm looking at the AscW UI, which is my font that I'm using in Visual Basic, and I find the inverted question mark. I can click on it and I can see that its Unicode character, which is hexadecimal, is 00BF. And my keystroke is Alt 0191. If I wanted to hard code that in my code, I can hold down the Alt key and press 0191. And that will go into my code. So this CHRW ampersand H, that ampersand H means it's a hexadecimal value. I dropped off the 00 because I don't need it and just did BF. So CHRW ampersand H BF would also give me that inverted question mark. Now CHR10 is our carriage return and CH13 is our line feed. So if I want to drop down to a new line, I could use those two concatenated together. However, in Visual Basic, there is a constant called vbCrLF. It's the Visual Basic carriage return line feed constant. We use it a lot when we want to start a new line in output or maybe creating a list of some sort. Now we can also go the other way, and we can use the ASCII, which of course stands for ASCII, and the ASCW. The ASCII, like the CHR, will show us values up through 127. So I can do ASCII and want to find out what the ASCII value is of the character D, it would return a 68. If I say ASCW inverted question mark, it's going to return a 191. Let's take a look at the Visual Basic application I wrote using these methods. In this Visual Basic application, I have a label called LBL output, a text box, txt quote, and another one called txt speaker. The user can enter a quote in the speaker, and I have a button here of btn show quote, and I'll show you the code for that. I dim a variable called output as string. I'm going to start with the CHR method 34. That is our double quote. I'm going to concatenate to that the text of txt quote, and then add another quote after that. And here's where we're going to use that vbCrLF, carriage return line feed, to drop down to a new line. CHR 126 is a tilde character, and then I do a space. I could have done a hard-coded space. I wanted to show CHR 32, but I could have put quote space quote here instead. and then the text property of txt speaker. Let me run that. And so I click on write on chalkboard, and we get the quote that was entered inside of quotes. And the next line we get a tilde, a space, and the name of the speaker. Here's another one I did, because really where CHR shines is in things like loops. We haven't talked about loops yet. I just want to demonstrate its value in a particular use within a loop, and that is on this chalkboard created the letters of the alphabet. Well, let's look at that code. Here's my btn CHR loop event handler. And I'm creating a variable, a string variable called alphabet that is a null string to start with, just quote, quote. And then here's my loop, for I equals 65 to 90. Now what that's going to do is going to go through the code in between the for and the next multiple times, each time incrementing I, starting with the value of 65 and going to 90. Now 65 is the decimal value of a capital A. 90 is the decimal value of an uppercase Z. So each time through the loop, we're going to add to the alphabet variable CHRI, that's going to give me an uppercase A the first time through, and CHR of I plus 32, that's 97. 97 is a lowercase a, and then a space. Then it hits next, and when it hits next, it's going to increment I from 65 to 66, and now we're going to get a capital B and a lowercase b and a space, and then a capital C, a lowercase c, and a space, all the way through to a capital Z, a lowercase z, and a space. Then we're going to set LBL output.text to the value of alphabet to display. Let's look at another one here. This is a btn CRLF click event handler. I'm creating a string called dogs that has a value of Alaskan Malamute. And then I'm going to concatenate to that, so I'm doing an ampersand equals vbCrLF, my carriage return line feed, and the word boxer. Next line, concatenate to that. Here I use an interpolation, so I got the dollar sign inside the quotes. We have our vbCrLF constant and the word Chihuahua. Next one, plus equals, here I do vbCrLF and the word Dalmatian. This time I don't use the mixed operator, the combined operator for concatenation. I just say dogs equals dogs, what the current value of dogs is, plus vbCrLF plus Great Dane. And kind of do the same thing here, but this time using interpolation. So dollar sign, and then my inside the quotes is the value of dogs, vbCrLF constant, and Rottweiler. So you can see there are multiple ways to do the exact same thing, and I could use the same method on all of these statements, but again, I want to show you there's multiple ways usually to do something when you're talking about coding. Finally, I take the value of dogs and assign that to the text property of LBL output list. Let's watch that run. So I'm going to click this button, vbCrLF demo, and there's my list of dogs in this label, using that vbCrLF to reposition the cursor on each new line. Over here, I've got a label that's connected to an image list. There's a bunch of images I generated in Photoshop with AI, and we can click on each of the different buttons over here and see that image and then the copyright information for that image. So this one's copyright 2024, Anthony Ant. So I wanted to demonstrate how you can get that copyright symbol. I tend to use it for a lot of things. I tend to put copyright notices on most of my applications to protect my intellectual property. I encourage you to do the same thing. Of course, these are all fake images. They're AI generated, so my copyright information is fake here. But again, just a demonstration. So kangaroo, there's our polar bear, our Rottweiler guarding the piggy bank, shark in the backyard swimming pool, and the cowboy riding the zebra. And before we look at that code, let's also demonstrate this one. This is going the other way. I want to take a character and look at the Unicode value. So here I've got the copyright symbol entered as the character in a text box. I click the button and I get a message box that says the decimal value of the copyright symbol is 169. And of course, if I change this to a capital A, we know that the ASCII value or Unicode value of a capital A is 65. A lowercase b is 98. Let's take a look at the code for all of these. So here's that ASCII click button. I'm going to take the text that is in txt char, that's the text box we can enter a character into, and then take the ASCW value of that string or that character and it's going to be an integer, and I'm assigning it to an integer variable called ASCII. Then I have a prompt string variable. Use a little interpolation here of the decimal value of, and I want the character that was entered into that text box is, and then here's my integer value of ASCII. And then I take that prompt and use it in a message box. For those image buttons, for the title button, I set the image index to 0 and the text of click button see images. But all the others here, we set the image index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for the text of my LVL copyright label, I'm going to set it to the CHRW. In this case, I'm using hexadecimal. So &H says that what follows after this is a hexadecimal value. A9 is the hexadecimal value of 169, which is the copyright symbol. And then I concatenate to that space 2024 and the name of the copyright holder. I do the same on all these others. Occasionally I use CHRW 169, so I can use either the hexadecimal or the decimal value in that CHRW method, and doing that throughout. So again, another way to do the same thing. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.